Hi. So, for this third session, um, so when I started making some notes, I thought that I will be covering a good portion. But the next 10 to 12 shlokas, what we have from where like we left last time, uh, I found that these shlokas and the purport was Prabhupada has, it has a lot of details and there are many finer points which Prabhupada has explained in a lot of detail. So once I reached to shloka number 57, 58, I thought I mean it will be good for me to stop here, and then if we find some time, collectively we can discuss around these shlokas, and maybe we can understand it bit deeper, because at many places Prabhupada has given a very deep philosophical understanding of our Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. So certain points which I have taken and I have plugged it on the slides, and at some places we will be referring to the book as well. So So we start with the shloka number 44 and 45. I think it's a slight overlap from where we left in the last class. Uh, यद्यपि हमारा गुरु चैतन्य रदासा तथापि जानियामि तन्हार प्रकाशा गुरु कृष्ण मने गुरु रूपा कृष्ण कृपा करे न भक्त गणे. Although I know that my spiritual master is a servitor of Sri Chaitanya, I know him also as a plenary manifestation of the Lord. According to the deliberate opinion of all the revealed scriptures, the spiritual master is non different from Krishna. Lord Krishna, in the form of a spiritual master, delivers his devotees. So, in these two shlokas, as per my limited understanding, uh, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj again re-emphasis, putting a lot of re-emphasis on the importance of a spiritual master, and he's making a point that it is very critical for disciples to just only not know that a spiritual master is non-different from Krishna, but actually to realize that a spiritual master is an extended form of Lord Himself. Uh, so at couple of places, Srila Prabhupada is explaining this point. And then there is one para which I have written here, which is very deep in my view, and where Prabhupada writes, the relationship of a disciple with his spiritual master is as good as the relationship with the Supreme Lord. Now, if we can meditate on this particular line, uh, for a disciple to really, when they serve when they serve their spiritual master, and when they appear in terms, when a spiritual master appears in front of them, versus when devotees visit multiple temples and they so during the Kartik month or during many other time in the year, when they go to temple and when they go in front of deities, uh, it is really very important for a disciple to understand and realize these things, that at times, at least this happens with me, uh, that we are we although theoretically understand that there is no difference between the spiritual master and the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, but in practicality, do we have same sort of emotion, sort of commitment, same sort of thought process when we come in front of a spiritual master, the way we are in front of our deities? Uh, Further, Prabhupada writes, a spiritual master always represents himself as a humblest servitor of the personality of Godhead. So this is the first part of the statement, where Prabhupada is declaring that a spiritual master will always, those who are genuine spiritual masters, and we all are so fortunate to be in ISKCON and being initiated by in the disciplic succession. So Prabhupada explains that the spiritual master, they will be representing themselves as the humble servant of Lord Krishna. but the disciple must look upon him as the manifested representation of the God. So that the problem is with the disciple. And if you read the purport further, then Prabhupada further explains that it is usually very difficult for disciples to adopt this fact that his spiritual master is just an extension of the Supreme Lord himself. So these are the points which I have uh, I have understood while I was reading and making some notes. Uh, and the entire couple of sections or couple of slokas, what we are going to go through today, which primarily explaining these two factors only, that how important it is for us to realize deep within our heart that there is no difference between the spiritual master and the supreme Lord. So we go to the next shloka, which is 46 and 47. Acharyam Acharyam Mam Vigniyan Navamanyeta Karhichita Namartya Buddhiyasuyeta Sarva Deva Mayo Guru Shiksha Guru ke Tajani Krishnera Swarupa Antaryami Bhakta Shrestha Ehi Doi Rupa. One should know the Acharya as myself and never disrespect him in any way. One should not envy him, thinking him an ordinary man, for he is the representative of all the demigods. One should know the instructing spiritual master to be the personality of Krishna. Lord Krishna himself manifests himself as the super soul and as the greatest devotee of the Lord. So again, what we were discussing, the same 2 points, which more extensive details, that and further, I think in the second shloka, even Krishna Kaviraj Goswami is explaining the importance of not only the Diksha Guru, but even the Siksha Guru, that uh, a devotee who, a spiritual master who might not be your initiating a spiritual master, but then you are listening to them, and you are getting the knowledge of the Supreme from them. We should be very cautious about it, that these are all expansions of Krishna, and we should be giving our, accordingly we should be giving our respect. I personally find, I mean, like it's a very close group, and if you look at our society at a large, I think this is a fundamental uh, you know uh, trouble at times. We see that our mind is too much like into differentiation between this guru, that guru, and different also polarization which happens in our more logical mind, which is too much polluted by the material influence, because this is how we behave. And differentiation, duplicity, and the polarization is something which is a very common factor in our material context. And whatever we try, ultimately these contaminations start penetrating our inner layers of consciousness, and then we start differentiating, and this differentiation is a sort of a subtle envy, which is very clearly condemned here. Uh, uh, so it is very critical for all the devotees who really want to deep dive into the devotional service. They understand that uh, either it is a Siksha Guru or it is a Diksha Guru, the spiritual master as a term, and more of that, if that spiritual master, uh, we know from our understanding, our limited understanding, or our limited capacity to hear. If we understand that uh, these are our spiritual master, at least we should try our best to stay away from these kind of apradhas, because it is very clearly mentioned and declared by the sincere and supreme souls like Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So certain qualifications, certain characteristics were given by Srila Prabhupada in the purport, that spiritual master is parental. So the way parents teaches their kid around the how to live life, exactly the spiritual master is teaching us that how to live a real life. He is also a professor of spiritual science. This is a term Prabhupada is using in purport, that spiritual master is a professor of spiritual science. And he explains that how this science works in the material context. And when we live a material life, how actually this science can actually bring us out of the entire material world and uplift us from wherever we are, and help us growing in our spiritual life. And these particular facts, again, there's an entire para in Prabhupada's purport where Prabhupada is explaining that there are so many spiritual masters, there are so many acharyas, like Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami. They all have confirmed this thing, and then the next few words we will be hearing that even the entire manifestation in which we all are sitting. So the whole material creation it was not possible had it been that Krishna has not given the instruction to Brahma, and Brahmaji being the first disciple. In order to get that knowledge, he had to undergo tapasya. So tapasya is also an integral part of this process, which we'll go through next few words. Uh, Another point which Prabhupada specifies in the purport, that in the process, while we follow a spiritual master, it is very important for a disciple to understand that we don't imitate. And similarly, to identify that somebody is a spiritual master, uh, we need to see that a person who is claiming to be a spiritual master should not be imitating the Lord, because as in the previous words, it was explained, the spiritual master represents himself as a humble servant of the Supreme Lord. Uh, so, uh, and then in the next verse, Prabhupada is explaining that Krishna himself is teaching via a spiritual master. So there are two ways Krishna is teaching us: within and without, from outside and from within. So within, he is teaching us in the form of Paramatma, and from outside, example was given the way Krishna was giving instruction to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. So similarly for us, within Krishna is teaching us or giving us instruction in the form of Paramatma, and outside, the way Krishna was playing a role of a spiritual master for Arjuna, Krishna, because of uh, causeless mercy, he has sent spiritual masters to us, and then they are teaching us that what is to be done and what is not to be done, and how we should be leading our life, and how you should be improving in our spiritual life. So very beautifully, Prabhupada is explaining. So, and then there is another para that when by learning from the self-realized spiritual master, one actually engage himself in the service of Lord Vishnu, functional devotional service begins. The procedure of this devotional service are known as abhideya, or action one is duty bound to perform. So very clearly Prabhupada is explaining that the execution of the devotional service, which we can execute only when we learn. So it is a kind of a micro process which Prabhupada is explaining, that when we serve spiritual master, or when we hear from spiritual master, or when we learn from a spiritual master, then actually we engage ourselves in the service of Lord Vishnu. And when we start engaging, then our real or functional devotional service begins. The procedure of this devotional service are known as abhideya, or action one is duty bound to perform. So it is not an optional. It's just like, so I took it in the way that Prabhupada is saying that the way we are duty bound to breathe. Yes, it is not our choice that we want to breathe or we don't want to breathe. Or the way we are duty bound to eat, that is not a choice that we will eat or we won't eat someday. Similar way, the devotional service for a living entity is a duty bound. Is duty bound. This is the way it should be taken. So very intense and very beautiful explanation by Srila Prabhupada here. I suggest that if all can read this at home again, this purport of Shloka 47, it will be much more helpful. Uh, then then 48 and 49, it is really very interesting. No, nevopayanti apachitim kavyasatavesha brahmapyasi kartam siddha mudam samartha yontarbhasi tanuvratam ashubham vidhun van acharya chaitva vapusa swagatim vyanakti. And then the shloka from Bhagavad Gita, Tesham satati yuktanam bhajatam apriti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam te yena mam upyanti te. O my Lord, transcendental poets and experts in spiritual science could not fully express their in-depthness to you, even if they were endowed with the prolonged lifetime of Brahma. For you appear in two features, externally as the Acharya and internally as the Supersoul, to deliver the embodied living being by directing him how to come to you. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So, a very intense and very interesting text I found, and I completely copy pasted it here with multiple underlines and highlights. So I will read it here, maybe twice. The Lord declares that by by enlightenment in theistic knowledge, he awards attachment to him to those who constantly engage in his transcendental loving service. So it's a kind of like a very detailed and step-by-step process with Prabhupada is writing here. This awakening of divine consciousness enthralls a devotee, who thus relishes his eternal transcendental mellow. Such an awakening is awarded only to those convinced by devotional service about the transcendental nature of the personality of Godhead. They know that the supreme truth, the all spiritual and all powerful person, is one without a second and has fully transcendental senses. He is the fountainhead of all emanations. Such pure devotees always merge in knowledge of Krishna and absorb in Krishna consciousness, exchange thoughts and realizations as great scientists exchange their view and discuss the results of their research in scientific academies. Such exchanges of thoughts in regard to Krishna give pleasure to the Lord, who therefore favors such devotee with all enlightenment. So we started with the alignment, and we end again, the process end with the again with more enlightenment. So it's a very interesting text, and it kind of explains very beautifully that how the entire process works, that we and Prabhupada is very clearly start the line that the Lord declares. It is not that there's no confusions around it. uh, so Lord very clearly declares that um, if somebody is a theist, he's having a theistic knowledge, then there is some attachment, and from that attachment he get engaged. Then if there is engaged, then he become awake. Once he become awake, he becomes enthralled. Then he become convinced for devotional service, and then once he continues process, he become pure. And once he becomes pure, then he is merged in knowledge of Krishna. And then such people, when they meet together, such pure devotees, they meet, they discuss about Krishna. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita later on, when we will read around the discussions between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Ramananda Roy, or many other like sort of Damodar Goswami, or many other discussions, when we will discourses, when we will hear. I mean, these are all the examples of such discourses what Prabhupada is explaining here. And then this will bring more and more favors with more and more favor to such devotees with more enlightenment. So it's one of a very enlightening text which I came through, and I thought it's worth sharing with you all. So as I said, that these 8, 9 verses were full of lot of philosophical pointers, and usually there's a lot of sections in Chaitanya Charitamrita where the purports are very small, maybe a para or two, and at many places they're not even a purport, just the translations is there. But I think this section has a very intense philosophical pointers which Prabhupada has given. Uh, then the next three shlokas. Yatha brahmane bhagavana swayam उपदिश्यानु भवतिवान ज्ञानम परम गुह्यम में यद विज्ञान समन्वितम सरस्यम तद अंगम च ग्रहणा गदितम माया यावान अहम यथा भावो यद रूपा गुण कर्म कह तथैव तत्व विज्ञानम अस्तु ते मोद अनुग्रह. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Swayam Bhagavan, taught Brahma and made himself realize. So this is the point which I was referring to before. Please hear attentively what I shall speak to you. For transcendental knowledge about me is not only scientific, but also full of mysteries. By my causeless mercy, be enlightened in truth about my personality, manifestations, qualities, and pastimes. So, in the purport of these shlokas, few of the points which I covered in the previous slide, pretty much few things are Prabhupada is referring again, and there are certain additional points which I could note down. So one para Prabhupada is writing that, and he's giving this example with respect to that how Brahmaji got the knowledge from Lord Krishna himself. So first he just heard the sound vibration, and and then he ultimately had to go through tapasya. And regarding the tapasya, Prabhupada explains that refraining from sensual enjoyment, one should voluntarily accept all sort of difficulty for spiritual realization. This is called tapasya. An enjoyer of the senses can never realize God, godliness, or the science of theistic knowledge. So very clean and clear and robust statements Prabhupada has given. There is nothing in existence not related with Sri Krishna. In a sense, there is nothing but Krishna, and yet nothing is Sri Krishna save and except his primeval personality. So I mean, it was also very. So I read it a couple of times, and then I said, yes, this means that actually there is nothing exists in our surrounding or in the world which is not related to Krishna, but we are so used to, or we are so much contaminated in spite of our everyday effort, we tend to forget it. And then I think association like this and discourses like this and the read like this make us remind again and again. We cannot discover the mysteries of Lord by our mundane endeavors. They are only revealed by His grace to the proper devotees. These mysteries are gradually disclosed to the various grades of devotees in proportion to the gradual development of their service attitude. So, I mean, see that. I mean, I recall long back. I think Bhakti Madhav Maharaj or like somebody was quoting one incident with Prabhupada that when in Bhagavatam there is one explanation where Prabhupada has written that from an insignificant ant to up to Lord Brahma, all the jivas have only one job or have only one occupation, is that get engaged into the service of the Supreme Lord. And then Maharaj was explaining that Prabhupada, so somebody was reading it for Prabhupada from Prabhupada books, the purport which Prabhupada has written. And after they quoted this line, Prabhupada said, "Oh, this is so beautiful," and he was saying that, see, that I don't have any capability to write such thing. It is actually Krishna want me to write this way, and that's why these things are written. Otherwise, how I can write such absolute truth in such a simplified form? So there's many such lines which I observed, and maybe one of the reason is that because I had to prepare a couple of slides and I had to do more deep dive, so I could maybe identify. But so this paragraph, that we cannot discover the mysteries of the Lord by our mundane endeavors, which we sometimes tend to feel that we will be able to understand certain things, or we understand certain things. But Prabhupada explains they are only revealed by His grace to the proper devotees. So the only hope for us to become better devotees. And then Prabhupada clarifying even that point, that these mysteries are gradually disclosed to the various grades of devotees in proportion to the gradual development of their service attitude. So it is very clear. It's very proportional theory that the better we are as a devotee, the better we will be able to understand Krishna and his Leelas and the mysteries of his supremacy. Um, and and that is the only process what we have. And for that, again, if we go back, then we need to serve the spiritual master, and we serve sincerely and pray for his grace so that we become a better devotee. So very wonderful and excellent purport which is given by Prabhupada. Then the text number, aham eva sam eva gre nanyat yat sat asat param paschad aham yad etascha yo vasisyeta so asmi aham ritertham yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani tadvidyad atmanomayam yatha bhaso yatha tamaha. Prior to the cosmic creation, only I exist, and no phenomenon exist, either gross, subtle, or primordial. After creation, only I exist in everything, and after annihilation, only I remain eternal. What appears to be truth without me is certainly my illusory energy, for nothing can exist without me. It is like a reflection of a real light in the shadows. For the light, there are neither shadows nor reflections. So here again in the purport, Prabhupada is explaining couple of pointers. One is that when Krishna says I or aham, the moment he say aham, it becomes personal. So everything in spiritual life is personal. This point, I think, we all read Prabhupada books, and Prabhupada emphasize this point at multiple places at multiple times. And again here, he's saying that when the word starts with aham is a personal word. It is in English. It is called I. So I is personal. And when we talk about the Brahma Jyoti or anything else, it is coming from this I. Then there's again a deep philosophical para. Sat means effect, asat means cause, and param refers to the ultimate truth, which is transcendental to cause and effect. The cause of the creation is called the Mahatattva, or total material energy, and its effect in the is the creation itself. But neither cause nor effect existed in the beginning. They emanated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as did the energy of time. So, we live in the world of relativity and duplicity, where we pursue things with the effect and the cause. And Prabhupada is giving example of darkness and sunshine. So they both basically like a part of the same thing. That if there is a sunshine, it means there was a darkness, and if there is a darkness, then there will be sunshine. But the reality is that light, and that light, somebody calls it Brahma Jyoti and all, but ultimately it is coming from the person. It is coming from Krishna. And then Prabhupada explains what is the definition of Maya. So that which is relative, temporary, and far away from the absolute truth is called Maya or ignorance. This illusion is exhibited in two ways, like explained in Bhagavad Gita. The inferior illusion is inert matter, and the superior illusion is the living entity. So when the moment I read this, there was a question in my mind: oh, how the living entity is is illusory, and and then immediately Prabhupada explains in the next couple of lines: the living entities are called illusory in this context only because they are implicated in the illusionary structures and activities of the material world. Actually, the living entities are not illusory, for they are part of the supreme energy of the supreme Lord and do not have to be covered by Maya if they do not want to be so. The action of living entities in the spiritual kingdom are not illusory, not illusory. They are actual eternal activities of liberated souls. So I mean I have been reading for long time at long places, but again this actually moved me. Uh, this definition again, Prabhupada is writing at many places in Bhagavad Gita. At many places, Prabhupada has written it in a so beautiful way. But here it is also Prabhupada is in very simplified way that there are two sort of uh, illusory energy. One is matter, and second is that we as a living entity. So we are not actually we are not, but because we are in contact with matter and we behave under the influence of this matter and identify ourselves as a part of this matter, that's why we also behave like superior illusory energy, but in reality we are not. And this whole process of distracting or extracting ourselves from our identification as a matter is the whole process of bhakti, is that where we go away from the matter and engage ourselves more and more in the service of the Lord in our natural position. So very nice. And and this is my last slide, because after that I started reading and making note, and I realized, oh, this is amazing. And maybe there are two pages which I will better be reading, because every single line is so important. So 55 and 56. Yatha mahan Yatha mahanti bhutani bhuteshu cha prachesanu pravistani apravastani तथा तेषु न तेष्वहम् एतावाद एव जिज्ञासां तत्त्वा जिज्ञासुनन्तं मनः अन्वयाव्यतिरेकाभ्यां यत् स्यात् सर्वत्र सर्वदा. As the material elements enter the bodies of all living beings and yet remain outside them all, I exist within all material creation and yet am not within them. A person interested in transcendental knowledge must therefore always directly and indirectly inquire about it to how to know the all pervading truth. And then there is a very interesting statement which I read from Prabhupada's purport, that material elements within and without, like the example of the example of sky is given. So when we breathe, uh, so there is a sky, and the air is a part of that sky which goes inside. So like sky is everywhere. The sky is outside, the sky is inside. Similarly, Krishna is everywhere. Then Prabhupada writes, his existence can be realized by one who has a single qualification of submissiveness and who thereby becomes a surrendered soul. The development of submissiveness is the cause of proportionate spiritual realization, by which, this is the statement Prabhupada makes, one can ultimately meet the Supreme Lord in person as a man meets another man face to face. So I was so moved that, okay, this is so although I read it a couple of times, but again Prabhupada writes another process, that so your desire to serve a spiritual master, but your service should be with lot with complete submissiveness, and in proportion to that submissiveness you will be growing spiritually, And the result of that spiritual process is that we can meet the Supreme Lord in person as a man meets another person face to face. This is really very enlightening. So I will just read this 2 pages. Please bear with me, and then I will pause. I know there's a lot of philosophy here, but this is very interesting. The gross material. So this is the purport of shloka number 55. The gross material elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, combined with the subtle material elements, mind, intelligence, and false ego, to construct the bodies of this material world. And yet they are beyond these bodies as well. Any material construction is nothing but an amalgamation or combination of material elements in varied uh, proportion. These elements exist both within and beyond the body. For example, so what I was explaining, correct? So although the sky exists in space, it also enters within the body. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, who is the cause of the material energy, lives within the material world as well as beyond it. Then just okay. So the entire material manifestation develops and exists because of the Supreme Personality of God and enters it as Paramatma or the Super Soul. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his all pervading feature of Paramatma, enters every entity from the biggest to the most minute. His existence can be realized by one who has the single qualification of submissiveness and who thereby becomes a surrendered soul. The development of submissiveness is the cause of proportionate spiritual realization by which one can ultimately meet the Supreme Lord in person as a man meets another man face to face. So this was the one important section. Now the entire purport of shloka 56. So there are multiple para, but I will read the first four, which are even more interesting. Those who are serious about the knowledge of the transcendental world, which is far beyond the material cosmic creation, must approach a bona fide spiritual master to learn science both directly and indirectly. One must learn both the means to approach the desired destination and the hindrances to such progress. The spiritual master knows how to regulate the habits of a neophyte disciple, and therefore a serious student must learn the science in all its aspects from him. There are different grades and standards of prosperity. This is the para number 2. There are different grades and standards of prosperity. The standard of comfort and happiness conceived by a common man engaged in material labor is the lowest grade of happiness, for it is in relationship with the body. The highest standard of such bodily comfort is achieved by a fruitive worker who by pious activities reaches the plane of heaven or the kingdom of creative gods with their delegated powers. But the conception of comfortable life in heaven is insignificant in comparison to happiness enjoyed in the impersonal Brahman. And this Brahmananda, the spiritual bliss derived from impersonal Brahman, is like the water in the hoofprint of a calf compared to the ocean of the love of Godhead. When one develops pure love for the Lord, he derives an ocean of transcendental happiness from the association of the personality of Godhead. To qualify oneself to reach the stage of life is the highest perfection. And the final one, for today's discussion, one should try to purchase a ticket, go to back home, back to Godhead. The price of such a ticket is one's intense desire for it, which is not easily awakened. Even if one continuously performs pious activities for thousands of lives, all mundane relationships are sure to be broken in the course of time. But one, but once one establishes a relationship with the personality of Godhead in a particular rasa, it is never to be broken, even after the annihilation of the material world. So I will pause here, and I just tried to understand these texts, plug certain points based upon my limited understanding. And I think we have some time, at least 10-15 minutes. So it will be nice if rest of the devotees their understanding and realization, and I think then we can conclude. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dhanvat Pranam. Very nice, Prabhu. Very beautiful. You taken out the nectarian. Every paragraph is nectar, but I think you just done the work of a bee. You know, who goes on a flower and extracts what would make the most impact in terms of progressing towards our devotional service. So wonderful. I think there are a lot of takeaways from your talk, Prabhu. Particularly, I think the one which strikes out to me is the quality of submissiveness, which has been emphasized to the extent that you can meet the Supreme Lord face to face. I think that's one big takeaway for me, because while other qualities are also expressed in multiple texts in multiple areas, I think this one really strikes out. And then the aspect of Supreme Lord being representative of, our spiritual master being a representative of Supreme Lord, and how we should look at him that way, right? That, and the fact that at all points in time we are not able to do the same, right? And it's particularly true when spiritual masters, there are multiple spiritual masters, and you have to be actually giving the same amount of respect, same amount of honor and all that. That's there, but sometimes you do. At least I do have my own, trials and tribulations there. So it's well pointed out there too. And of course, Sloka 47 that you mentioned, that purport, I'll definitely read. And yeah, wonderful. I just wanted to make sure that I cover a few points which struck me.
Adi Govinda Prabhu, Shiva Prabhu, Siddharth Prabhu, any?
Prabhuji, as you mentioned in the beginning of your class, like multiple spiritual master as we see in the society also. So the fact, as you're mentioning, like Guru Tattva is the one, and that is manifested in different forms in the different gurus. So in fact, now it is much better. Like we take whomsoever is maybe all the Prabhupada disciples, whomsoever is maybe like is our Guru. So that way, Guru Tattva is the one. And there is no meaning discriminating between one Guru to another Guru. It's making a sectarian inside the ISKCON itself. Yeah. So that is a good point, in fact. So we should take whomsoever the disciple of Prabhupada, whomsoever the spiritual masters have taken the position, they are all one. And that's what they also want us to do. So that was a good point from our side, Prabhu. That is a nice thing.
Shri Gaur Prabhu. Siddharth Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Today's session was really very amazing. Actually, all the purports seemed, I was just skimming through the purports also as you were pointing it out, and they all seemed very, very nectarian. I think I'll read all those. One point that struck me a lot initially when you were discussing was how when Srila Prabhupada points this out, that pure devotees who are absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, how they discuss amongst themselves in the way how scientific people discuss their theories or their findings. And I don't know, this just struck a bell in my mind because I've seen this in office, I've seen this in so many other places where people are completely engrossed in some discussion or the other, like whatever fields of interest that they are. And I also generally tend to get into that. But then I realized that yes, ultimately, this is something very similar. If when pure devotees who are completely absorbed, they'll be talking about Krishna and then they'll be discussing it amongst themselves. Second point I liked a lot was, as Anand Jaraman was told, the point of submissiveness, that how like just submissiveness is the cause of this proportionate spiritual realization, and ultimately it leads us to meet the Lord face to face. Recently, like Harikshit Prabhuji, he was giving a talk, and then he was talking about how humility is switching to a top gear in Krishna consciousness. Humility and submissiveness, and then we all drive cars, and then you will go to top gear, and it enables us to go very, very fast. So this was able to correlate both these points. These 2 points struck me a lot. Thank you.
Yeah,
So
I just want to thank all of you to actually give me opportunity to read it, because I had to make slides, so I have read it at least 10 times in last 2 days, and I was saying, oh, this is amazing, this is very beautifully written by Prabhupada, and this is, how I missed it. If I read Prabhupada, I don't even recall that ever I read it before. So this is, I'm so thankful to all of you to make me read these shlokas and Prabhupada. So it was really very amazing experience reading through. So
yeah, Siddharth Prabhu was mentioning one more point. Like I was also reading somewhere in the Prabhupada's purport that Prabhupada want that like the lawyers, they put the argument and counter argument in the court for any point. Similarly, Prabhupada expect like the devotees should also study and then put the arguments and understand the things in much more, go into depth of the things.
yeah.
So that's what just when Siddharth Prabhu was mentioning, I was also remembering that I just read such that Prabhupada purport somewhere. Yes, Prabhu, keep going.
Nice. Okay, so thank you so much, Prabhuji. So Prabhuji, for the next class, who will be taking the lead?
God Prabhu will give the class next time, I hope. Prabhu is not there?
I don't know, he's there, but he's अदृश्य mode में है वो. Okay. ठीक है, Prabhuji, I think we will talk in the group and finalize somebody, and either Sudhanshu, sorry, Sudhir Gopal Prabhu or Sri Gaur Prabhu.
Sure, Prabhu,
But thank you so much, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very nice.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Yeah.